Hi, I'm Howard Kelly. Welcome to the S&S Proven Performance Podcast. Today we're going to be talking to Chris Callen and Brian Klock about their P Series bikes that they built for our vintage tour. And let's get started. No particular order. Who wants to tell us about their bike?
Chris, lead it. You're the man.
Everybody's probably tired already of hearing all of my stories, but it's my thing telling stories. So this bike had to have a story. And a lot of people know me for building 9 foot long choppers. I almost did that. This became an opportunity to step out of my comfort zone and also tell a wonderful story that I learned a lot about as we went through this was the beginning of the custom motorcycle. So that all started in post-war America with returning GIs making cut-down motorcycles out of their dad or grandpaps panhead or knucklehead or even flathead, and that's where we started with this bike.
So, do you want to say anything more about the bike?
Oh yeah,
Like any
I
stuff
mean,
you've done to it or
what we started out with, strangely enough, when you look at this bike, it looks like a bone stock 1949 panhead. And that being said, it was the most amount of customizing I've ever had to do to a motorcycle, which is strange to say, right? But we originally I bought this whole rolling chassis and collection. It was like a bike in a box, probably a decade ago, 10 years ago, and it sat in boxes on my shelf. And when we got this opportunity, I thought this was a great time to bring this thing out and show how the S&S Vintage Series motors could be used to replicate great bikes of the past. So we took all the 49 parts that we had and we unmolested them because they had been chopped and cut and, loved and reloved over the years and abused severely. So we started with the frame, cut the whole front half of the frame off, new neck casting, remade the whole front part of the frame to put it back completely to stock. Even took the time that once we did our TIG welding, we went back over it with silicon bronze to make it look like it was the old gas welds. You know, we took it that serious to make it that
wow.
very correct. But then that also required a certain amount of work to the motor. Even though the motors are great, they're bulletproof, it's 93 inches of killer power, we had to make it look unmanufactured by today's standard, right? And that's not real. It wasn't super difficult, but it took some time and some thought. We ended up getting a scaler and using a scaler all over the motor cases. Any place that was shiny from the manufacturing process, we just made look like old cast aluminum. And then, did some tricks with the chrome parts to make them look like stainless. Because in 1949, there would have been a certain amount of the parts on the bike that were 49 only stainless steel parts. So we addressed like the rocker covers, the cover on the generator, the cover on the top of the what would be the distributor, things like that. And then from there, once we got a whole stock motorcycle, then we started going with what would have been custom of the day. We addressed the profile of the front fender and made, a much sexier of the day cut down fender. We did a version of the hinge fender where they cut the hinges off, reprofile that corner, and then re-radius it a little bit further up and got it kicked up, and then hot rod, everything hot rod from there. We went with classic black, some antique ivory scallops on it, even hung an old raccoon tail on it that would have been perfect hot rodder of the day. But it was a great trip because I worked with a bunch of young people that didn't know that story, and that was the best part. Was as I learned more about it, because I thought I knew a lot. As I learned more about it, I got to expose them to it, and I got to show them like a lot of the parts that we're used to today, the bobtail fender, the narrow fender on a wide glide front end with a 21-inch wheel, like a lot of that, the shapes and what would become the custom parts that we'd see in catalogs for the next 3 decades, they started in that era.
Right on.
Well, Chris, I think that's where the beauty of the whole thing was, is you come in as a chopper guy. You have to unchopper this motorcycle, right? Take all the 70s flair out of it. And when you said, I'm going to build a gentleman's cut down, I didn't even know what that meant, right? And yet it was, it was post war. It was what they had money for. And it was more about style and about creativity with parts that existed than it was just throwing parts on it, right?
Yeah. Now, what that
And
meant by today's standards, though, that was the tricky part because I'll tell you what, I've never been so aware that, like, as chopper builders, we really have it easy because when you start going after period correct finishes, even like the amount of money that we spend on hardware for parkerized hardware and cadmium plated hardware, to get that like authentic look and feel of that motorcycle, it was a fortune. It was a fortune. I'll never be so happy to buy chrome hardware again for the next chopper I build.
Chris, explain to them the battery box trick. I think that's something that a lot of people are never going to see or notice, but I'm hoping they get to see some images here
They
and
will.
you can kind of give them the insight as to
Yeah, so
it's cool.
we got down to 0 hour, and poor Scotty, like Scotty was our whipping post for everything.
And you're
Like,
talking about Scott Hakens on the
yeah,
S&S side.
yep, and he
He got
was
calls from all of us at 10:30 at night.
what a absolute blessing because we called him with everything out of left field, and that was what this call was. We called up. We're literally 0 hour finishing this motorcycle and realized nobody even paid attention to, oh, what kind of ignition system does this bike have? We start reading through the paperwork, and we call Scotty up and we're like, hey man, it says that we have to use a modern coil for this. And he was like, well, yeah. He said, he said either that or you can gut the ignition system and put some points and stuff in her. And I'm like, man, I can't see doing that. I can't make it not perform like the S&S motor should. But I also, if you're aware of what a 1949 coil looks like, it's very specific, right? Like it looks like an old tuna can 49, like, and I didn't want to go against that. So what we were ending up doing anyway with the battery, we got a Bates battery box that looks like an old six volt battery, right? Big tall battery, but the top comes off and you hide your anti gravity battery inside of it, and then two wires come up and there's actual terminals and everything. When the cap goes on, you never know it's not a real battery. Well, in 0 hour, there we are, and Todd from Klock, I got to give him a bunch of the credit here too because we're sitting there looking at it and we're like, the last thing I want to do is throw this big, ugly, modern coil on the side of this motorcycle. It's just going to look like nobody thought about it, and just an afterthought. We threw something together. So we took the top of that battery box, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, there's just enough room to put a layer of foam padding, and then that coil. And we can do a little cutout window in the back of it. And what we ended up doing was we took the two coil wires off of the old style coil, made them go up around the back of it, and then the two coil wires from the real coil out of the back of that battery box are hidden, and they go right behind the coil and they come out this way. So two fake coil wires go this way, and then two go this way and go to the motor and actually run the bike on the modern coil that's hidden. But it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it
But it
was
is.
such a win for us, right?
But it is a big deal, right? Because that's what custom is. Custom is making something look what it's supposed to look, but still do what it's supposed to do. And that's a fantastic story, man.
And
Yeah, I
like,
think Chris had built one of the most understated custom bikes of this whole thing. And people look at it, they want to ride it, they think it's OE. They have no idea how much work went into making it look the way it looks, right? It'd be great to have a 49 Panhead sitting right there and go,
Yeah.
oh, well, this one's way cooler. I like it because of this and that. And you'd be able to understand all the things. But Chris did exactly that with photos, with even a huge life size thing of the whole frame, just to be able to not only educate, but also share it with my entire team that went over to his house after hours. So 5 o'clock, they'd be done with work, going to the gym. And after the gym, they'd head over to Heather and Chris's garage at his house and they built this bike. And Chris, God bless him. He's a teacher, he's a storyteller and an educator. And he taught those kids a ton about this process.
it
Chris, do you
was
want to call out like who was all over there?
all of them. I mean, we called her out at the unveil in Daytona. We talked about Danny, our motor witch, She was on both projects. She was incredible. She really was. I mean, she was elbows deep in both motors because we both had to, even though we got perfectly good motors, of course, we both had to take them completely apart and do all this stuff to them. But all of the guys, man, Ian, Aaron, Dave was at the house, Todd was there, Ryan was even over here and there. Shelton, who was my ace on a lot of stuff, everybody participated. And one of the best memories that come out of this, the first night we started working on the frame, and this is a video that's up on, it's either up or going up now on the Cycle Source TV. There was an opportunity when we started cutting the frame. I looked around the room to everybody and I realized I was hanging out with a room full of kids. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? All of you guys are going to take a turn and you're going to do one cut on this frame as we cut this frame all apart. I said, because you may never in your lifetime get an opportunity to cut a stock 49 frame apart ever again in your life. But tonight, everybody's going to get to cut this thing at least one time. And man, they were like kids, you know? They just one at a time, everybody was there and they were doing it. And they all have that story, man. And that's what makes this all special, right?
So Brian, Chris was the understated bike.
Mine might have been a little overstated.
Why don't you tell everybody about yours?
So mine's called RK's 61. And there's a corner in the shop here dedicated to my dad. My dad had a huge influence on me from my car taste to my motorcycle taste. Okay. But dad would have had a Chevy pickup with some cool wheels and a pinstripe on it. And I would have a Chevy pickup that's cut, chopped, lowered, shaved, door handles, just, you know. And my dad never understood that. You wrecked a perfectly good motorcycle or a perfectly good car, right? And so, but there's a picture here. Stephanie Sattler from Missouri actually did all the S&S 50th original paintings. Okay.
Yeah.
This friend of mine did a painting for me of my dad and his best friend, Sylvan Bleecker, 1966. In the back of this little picture we have, black and white picture, says August 1966. Okay. That's 1 month before I was born. Yes, I'm 58 years old. And the beauty of it is that, that was my dad leaving my mom 1 month prior to me being born, leaving from Emory, South Dakota, going to Sturgis on his 61 Panhead. And the bike was white with red hi-fi stripes. It should have been hi-fi red with white stripes. I talked to Greg Liu, who's one of the Panhead experts out there in America today, and he said, well, that your dad ordered the reverse option. That's what that bike is. You could have got white with blue or white with red by telling them you wanted the reverse. But the bikes came red or blue with white stripes. And so I thought I'm going to stay true to that. I'll use the 1961 emblem and the frame. Maybe that's about it. so we took off on it. But again, I took a chopper frame that was $400 off of Facebook. It had square tubes in the muddiest, grossest, rustiest neck you ever seen. Chris got me the headstock for it. And, like he said, we unchopperized them. We put them back to what they were. Okay. And of course, the Panhead motor, it's 93 inches. It's beautiful. The fit and finish on it is perfect, but it's not fully polished. So you got to take it apart, right? Order new gaskets. Why not? It's brand new, makes perfect sense until you put the oil pump back together and you get the one gear in the wrong way. And Scotty explains to you, oh, yeah, you can flip that one pretty easy. Sorry, boys. So we got to take the oil pump back apart, and shame on me. But we hustled. We got the bike together. We used a chrome 61 front end, a 61 swing arm frame. Chris, God bless him, had already put so much work into studying all the original things. He was my mentor and my guide in this thing about that's right, this is not right. That's cool, but that's, not perfect for what you're doing. And so we tried to keep it as true as we could, but as custom as we could. Called Burt Baker. He and I both started in 1997. And it was funny, to be able to introduce Dave Perowitz and Danny Gray to a guy like Burt Baker at his first ever event in Cincinnati. That was a treat, right?
Uh-huh.
And yet now I call Bert and I'm like, I need one of those 6 and a 4 transmissions. I need it fully polished. I want to do kick and electric start so that anybody at Clockworks could ride it anytime they wanted to. Chris goes, yeah, but he's got those tintype primaries. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that thing. So we look up the tintype primary. I call Lisa back and I'm like, Lisa, is there any way? She goes, Brian, we have none of that stuff left. It's gone. It's been gone a long time. Let me see what I can do. Well, it's kind of me and Bert having that kindred, start year. Correct. I mean, I would put Chris in a loop, but Chris is 6 months ahead of me, always 6 months ahead of me. So, every time I'm 27 years, he's 27 and a half years. And, you got to play to the game, respect your elders. And so I'm older than him. I'm kidding. So the
Well, let's see.
beauty of,
I put Bert in a magazine first, so
Yeah.
where does
yeah,
that put
see?
me?
Well, and you put me in the magazine. So
But
my
but we're talking
first
about
ever
Bert.
FXR,
I know
1997,
the purple FXR, but the point being that makes me older than both of you in that case.
Yeah, well, I'm just respecting you. Let's just say that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we won't go age anymore. Anyway, they found an inner no problem, but it had been chewed up. When it was in the machine, it got loose and wrecked it. Okay. Well, then they found the outer. So now I got to take those two pieces and fix them. Justin Page and my machinist made the boo-boos look like they're supposed to be there. And that's probably one of the biggest hits on that bike.
Oh yeah.
That tintype primary, people are like, I want to buy that. I
Well,
wish I could buy that.
that
Where'd you get
that
that?
that tin type primary that's actually billet aluminum, right?
It's full billet. It's full billet.
That's
So I got a brand new motor. I got a brand new transmission. I got all the cool kid stuff. Jeff Cochran at Speed Kings provided me that beautiful little oil tank and the battery box, which, we put a lithium anti-gravity battery in there. We painted the frame all the same birch white color. We had Dwayne Ballard stitch the seat and the tank panel for us. We called on our friends at Lowbrow and used a couple of their 45 tanks, which made them super small. But then in order to get that 1 year only 61 kind of weird graphic on the front, it's more how it drops off in the front that's strange about it. I called Greg Liu, Tom Banks. They all gave me all the measurements I could so I could kind of shrink them down on these 45 tanks and make it right. My whole bike was put together by Shelton, Einerwald, Danny Prey, the same lady that, he was just referring to, Chris was, and Ryan Anderson. They are my techs here. They work here. They help me with social media. They help me with R&D. They order all the parts. But this strap you see right here is rotator cuff surgery. I have a 4-year-old, and so now he wants to play ball and ride his dirt bikes and do all the things. And I've been fighting this thing for 6 years, and it's just time to get it fixed. If nothing else, to be a good dad to Cargo. And so my dad was a good dad to me. I need to be a good dad to Cargo, and so I went for it. And man, it was tough. I've always been kind of the coach and the quarterback. I turned into just the coach. So it was fun because there's 4 stars on the battery box. Those 4 stars represent me and my brothers and our love for the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, cue the booing. I get it. But that's our
right
our
there with you. So
our team from when I was 5 years old. I like the Cowboys, so my brothers like the Cowboys. When my parents got a divorce, my brother Troy in Phoenix said, "Man, I can't believe you can stick around there and put up with all that crap. I don't know how you do it." Our family only ever agreed on a couple things: pizza and the Dallas Cowboys. And he said, "I'm going to go get a Dallas Cowboys tattoo. I just burned my journal. It was getting a little dark." And I said, "Oh, great idea. When you get the tattoo, send it to me and I'll do the same thing." So we all have tattoos on our left leg, just below our belts and on our hip. And the Cowboys won the Super Bowl that year. So as fitting as it was a tribute to my dad, it was also a little piece of the 4 boys that shaped my life. And of course, my dear mom, without her, I wouldn't even be here. So it was family for me. It was historic for me. It was reaching back, but it was being true to me, which is full custom, and paying homage to my dad, which is a little mild and not so wild. And it worked out perfect. And, even when we put the stars on the oil tank, Shelton looked at me and goes, "That really is kind of a cool touch now that I know the story." And I didn't think it would look good.
well, like Chris said, every bike is a story.
Every good bike.
Question for you guys. When I approached you guys about being on the tour, why'd you say yes?
For me, it's easy. Why would you say no? I was part of the S&S 50th, and I thought that was a huge honor. I couldn't even afford that motor at that time. And we call it Swap Me Louie. The bike is called Swap Me Louie. There was a song out by Sir Mix-a-Lot at that time. My brothers labeled me with Swap Me Louie because I always saved everything. Well, I had this whole palette of stuff that customers had stuck me with, and I just started pulling it out. I mean, our bike, if you go back and look at our S&S 50th, it's a compile of parts that you would never expect, from a Buell fairing to a 300 wide tire. It's just stupid. The bike is ridiculous, right? And for me, when we got the call and we got to do this, it was more special to do two Panheads than anything I could have imagined, because for one, it was a tribute to my dad. Number two, it connected me with Chris and I to do these at the same time. And for Chris to say, I'm not building a chopper, it represents a shift in mindset, right? For me to be the coach, for Chris not to do a chopper, for him to become the great storyteller that he was destined to be, an educator. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't know how this could have worked out any better for me personally.
Wow.
Well,
Go ahead, Chris.
so for me, all of that too. But man, there's one thing that I'm telling all the younger guys now that I'm getting a little bit older, that people of our generation are starting to reach a place where they need to accept leadership opportunities. And I feel like this was one of those times, right? The custom motorcycle industry needed this. It needed to have times where efforts and events and certain people and places are put on top of a pedestal. You know what I mean? And looked at like, wow, look what's been accomplished here. And that's
Yeah,
what
you
that's.
can question the time and the money, but you're right, Chris. It was a statement. And it was a statement made by S&S.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, that's what I looked at. I questioned myself on this if I could do this 7 or 8 times. You know what I mean? Like, where was I going to get the money? Where was I going to get the time? But at the end of the day, how can I tell other people about accepting leadership opportunities and not take it myself? You know what I mean? This was something that after 30 years now, almost 30 years, the motorcycle industry needed something from me. How was I not going to participate? And everything else was the bonus to it. All the experience, everything that we went through, because maybe again because of my age, I start to look at all this stuff a little more special. This might be the only time I ever get to do this. That might be the only time those kids get to cut that frame. This might be the only time Brian and I ever get to build a bike together. So I'm going to make this one count. Everyone I get to do like that.
So, does everybody listening know why Brian and Chris keep talking about doing things together? I wonder if one of you guys should explain that.
He's on the other side of the wall. So it's fortunate for me that I needed some room in my shop, built a little extra area, and I built a little studio downstairs. And I was told it doesn't need a vaulted ceiling. Well, I've been building this thing out on mezzanine, so I built a mezzanine. And then Chris called and said, man, I don't know, getting frustrated. I said, okay, well, come on out. He came out. He goes, why did you even bring me out here? I sent him plane tickets to come to our Christmas party. And we walked on the other side of the wall, and I said, I would love for this to be the future offices of, Cycle Source Magazine. And he looked at me like, I'm not moving to South Dakota. And a few months later, he called me. He goes, you know what? I think you're right. Let's do it. So we jumped in the truck and trailers and headed to Calvary to Pittsburgh and loaded up him and Heather and brought them back. And now they bring more to our team than I think we give to them. They contribute. They bring in ideas. Like I said, this Panhead, he guided me the whole way of what not to do, what I could do. And we challenge each other because we've both been doing this for 27 years now. Of course, he's 6 months faster than me. I already told you that. So, but the beauty is we challenge each other, right? And
Right.
we feel like we owe the industry, and the industry needs to come back to custom building, not just putting parts on a bike. Let's build it from scratch. Yes, you can have the bike that you built with the parts, and you take your wife and your gear and all your stuff. Believe me, I'm a bagger guy. You don't have to tell me twice, okay? But at the end of the day, man, it's an energy you get like you can't even understand from building a bike like this, especially with a group of friends and a group of people, and then standing on the podium and just smiling, just being happy. Like there's no better way to celebrate.
I agree. I was thrilled that you both wanted to be part of it. It was cool for me because of my connection to both of you, obviously. Because Brian, I've known you for literally your whole career, and Chris from way back as well. Chris had his own career before I met him, but
Not much. Howard's responsible for me really starting to take things serious on another level. A lot of people don't know that. When I first had the stupid idea of moving from a regional publication to a national one, Howard became my mentor. However that happened, he
however harsh I might have been.
he took me under his wing, and I still remember the story. He told me 5 or 6 phone calls in a row. He said, "Hey, listen, not for nothing, but I was the editor of this publication, and if you ever want to critique about what you're doing, so you can baseline where you're at," he said, "I'm willing to sit down with you. I'll take as much time as you need." And I was like, "Oh, it's awesome, Howard, it's awesome." He goes, "Just let me know if you really want that." And one day I got the guts up to say, "Okay, I want that." And he asked me again. He goes, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure, man." Like I was pretty cocky about what I was doing. And he said, if I can use less than polite language, he started it off with, "You got a lot of balls." And he went on to tell me, at the time I was making some pretty strong assertions about, what we were going to do versus what everything else that had been done. And, I was young and brash, and Howard fixed that up for me and put my head right.
Well, not about me. I have another question for you guys. You talked a lot about your bikes, but I would like for you, because obviously we're recording this and there'll be photos of your bikes put up through it and all. And I say this so people know we're recording this in one take and it's not all cut together. You don't even know the questions, but if you had to pick one feature on your bike that you wanted to make sure people took note of, what would it be? Because I can tell you that Chip and Kevin were like that with it.
Yeah, well, for me, it's not that easy, honestly, because my thing and the thing that I will tell my team all the time is it doesn't matter if you paint the bike pink, brown, burgundy, orange, the stance has to be right. Okay. And so I preach that to them all the time. I said, if you took that bike and you made it like a line drawing, the hard part's done. Now, yeah, you got to pick the right color. But at the end of the day, if you really like the color and nobody else likes the color, it'll because the stance is right, right?
For the stance being like a side profile look at your bike.
Yeah. Side
Okay.
profiles, if you're just going to line draw the bike, I think our bike with the fat front end, the tiny little handlebars, the Invader, style wheels from Paddock Lead Sled, the Metzler tires on it are the right size, right profile. The fender's short. And so it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, yeah, it's white, as a tribute to my dad's bike, but it could have been blue. It'd still be cool. And
I agree.
it's bathed in chrome and it just has the right stance.
Nobody's going to confuse it to not be your bike.
Thank you. I'll take that.
No, it's good. Chris, what about you?
There's a ton of great features, and of course, I want to jump right to the frame and talk about how amazing we all did as a team to achieve that frame. But I'm not sure how many people, other than like true antique motorcycle aficionados, would key in on that. The thing that I would like to point out the most is the engine, because the engine is the star. With a very little bit of treatment, we put that motor went into that 49 chassis, and when you walk up to it, there isn't a guy on the planet that wouldn't be proud to roll that thing into any AMCA show anywhere. You know what I mean? Like what the Vintage Motor Series from S&S has done is given anybody the ability to have one of those bikes, plus not have to be a certified engineer to keep it on the road, you know? So
There's that.
I think that's my biggest thing is like really take a look at that bike and think about how well that would sit in a crowd of other vintage or antique motorcycles.
We lost Brian for a minute. I hope he comes back. Again, we're recording this without any editing and stuff. So right now you're just seeing Chris and I, but that's okay. I like Chris. He likes me. But hopefully Brian will come back soon. You can bang on the wall and remind him what to do, Chris.
You know what? While he's not here, I'm going to tell you like the amazing thing about Brian's motorcycle is as much as people expected me to bring out a chopper, you know, and I went against that presupposed idea of what I do. Nobody expected Brian to build something like this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that was straight like old school sucker punch Sally, cool little bar hop bobber. Like he killed it with that bike. He killed it. You know, and it was really like when you see that sign sitting there that says Brian Klock and that motorcycle, I think that's people are just gonna be, they don't understand that, right?
Right.
How does the bagger guy, how does the windshield guy out cool the cool kids?
I will tell you that all six of the bikes in their own right just make such amazing statements. And I feel, well, first of all, I will tell you that Thursday afternoon before the launch, when the sixth bike showed up in Daytona, about 400 pounds of stress came off my shoulders.
Yeah, I bet. It's hard to keep
People that
custom.
are watching, come on, Brian, come back. People that are watching, we did a little private industry premiere of the bikes on a Thursday night before we launched them to the public on Friday. And when you always hear the stories about people working on their bikes till the last possible minute, we were all in there having some food, having some drinks, and about 10 minutes before we were officially going to be done with that event, Chip came in after getting straight off of the airplane, came straight to the event to bolt the last few parts on his bike while everybody was standing around. And it was that kind of crazy.
You know, I was even that was one of the other cool things that I'll point out about both my and Brian's bike. So anybody from the old bike community knows the whole be a man, ride a pan, change your luck, ride a knuck stickers. Well, ahead of time, I had sent away and had special decals made for both of our bikes. Now, Brian's wife is a brunette. My wife Heather is a headed girl, and I had characters made specifically that represented those two women, and so we're gonna share. See, other side of the wall.
Other side of the wall. I wasn't kidding. I don't know what happened.
But that's, you know, that's how good it was, man. Like it meant enough. Like, you know, Brian had special collars made for his pushrod tubes, and
I saw those.
we all had so many little extras that we were putting in because we were so proud of these motorcycles. Every single person there.
But you should be. So, on that, I want to end this with a final question to you guys. And you kind of talked about this already, but let's just say we decide to do another S&S build next year, which I'm kind of hoping we do. What would you tell people if they are presented with the opportunity?
Use a supercharger. Okay, there's your insider trading joke, folks. We have a group chat, okay, about these bikes, and we're all talking about them. We're all doing the thing. We're all chatting about it. We're all just ribbing each other bad, right? And so Mike Beelan brings out that freaking turbo drag bike thing, and Howard kept poking me. He's like, Brian, there's still time. You can still put a supercharger on it. There's still time. It's like, I love me a supercharger.
I think the thing I would tell everybody is whatever it is that you build, like you have to do it. If you get the opportunity, you have to be involved in this. If whatever it is that you build, make sure you tell a story. Think about what you're doing. Tell a story. Share this stuff with people in a way that it has meaning, that it'll go further than just, hey, look at my shiny thing, you know?
Yeah, because you look at Mike Beelan's vintage drag bike, right? That's totally him. He is Top Fuel, loves it. Like he breathes nitro. That's his thing. He's just a weirdo. Okay, I love it. And then you go to Mikey and Chip, and they always do things completely unconventional. So they take a knucklehead and they put it in an FXR frame. They murder out the whole motor, which is not even a thing you ever did with a knucklehead. And then you build one-off billet oil tanks and weird stuff for it. And it's so cool that you don't even understand it all. Okay. Kevin perfect, right? It's right up his alley. A little rusty, a little crusty, and whoa, it's an S&S. Even now, it's trusty. You can take that, Kevin. You can use that. But it's a big deal, right? It's cool. And then Xavier. I mean, X builds FXRs, and that's when I met him. And it was blitzed out, and it was all chrome, and it was beautiful, and candy paint. And I mean, if you're a rock star, that's what you do.
He's
right?
a rock star.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Chris went completely the other way, right? And shocked us all. We were all expecting a 9-foot chopper, and then he educates us in the process. So I think that's exactly what he's saying, is that you got to do you got to be true, but don't be afraid to challenge yourself to do a little something different and fly in the face of normality and create your own trends. Go for it. Like, get out there and make something that makes you giggle.
That's awesome, guys. That's perfect ending. It really is. I want to thank you both for the time today and for being part of the program. You guys are amazing. I'm glad I've known you as long as I have, and thank you again very much for supporting S&S.
So good to see you guys all back together too, Howard. That was, we had a little dinner in Daytona, and seeing the table of everybody sitting around together again, Rodeo and Charlie, and it was a real blast.
It felt good. It really did feel good. And I hope the industry comes back to building bikes. We build community through it. We build camaraderie, and we build memories that'll last for generations. And that's the key. I mean, you featured my first ever bike when you were a magazine editor, and then included me in 2008 when you were back at S&S doing the 50th thing. And I still have all of those pieces. I'm honored. So thank you again. I appreciate S&S, and thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you, guys. All right.